Hello, my name is Caden, and today I'm going to talk about how I fixed my P0300 on my 2002 Buick LeSabre. I don't really do videos on this car, I don't really talk about it, I forget I even have it sometimes, but this is the one with working AC. It's 96 out, so this one's going to get a little break for a minute, just because it's too damn hot. Anyway, so I was driving home and the car almost stalled. It lost all its power pretty much. The service engine soon light would be flashing. Plugged in the scan tool immediately. I have sitting by me in the car actually in case something like that happens, and I noticed it's a P0300. So where do you start with a P0300? Well, you would think normally, well, for those of you who don't know who P0300, it's a random multiple misfire. Now, this all just happened at once, so that kind of narrows down the fact that, okay, so it's happening on all cylinders, right? So it's not just going to affect one part of the engine. It's something that affects the whole engine, right? So, you know, you need fuel, air, and spark, compression, timing, whatever, for an engine to run, but we'll stick with the air, fuel, spark. We'll go through all those first. So first thing I did is, with the car running, I unplugged my mass airflow sensor. What that will do is that'll default to basically a factory computer setting where it will take over the air fuel ratio without this input. Unplugging this did nothing except for get a pending code for the mass airflow sensor circuit A volume low, and that's normal. That's something that'll happen. That means it's working correctly. So it was not the mass airflow sensor. You would have noticed a change in idle and your engine running. So next thing I go to is fuel pressure. So I have a fuel pressure gauge. You just screw into that Schrader valve there. The fuel pressure was reading good under load and at idle, so we know it wasn't a fuel pressure issue. So that leads us to spark ignition. So if you have a coil pack fail, you're gonna get a code for one or two specific cylinders. So a P0300, something that affects all cylinders. So you're not gonna have a single coil pack affect every single cylinder at the same time and make it was just running so poorly, so poorly. So another thought I had was the crankshaft position sensor. Well, a lot of times you'll get a stalling effect when you get those crankshaft position sensors acting up. Well, there was no, I couldn't see any visible damage to wiring itself. I didn't want to guess with that. I had a feeling it just wasn't that because the vehicle itself wasn't stalling. So here's what I went to next, is this ignition control module. That is about what I narrowed it down to. So I went to a junkyard and I picked up all three coil packs, the ignition module, and the bracket itself. I got it for $15 at the junkyard. Guy gave me a real good deal on it because I'm kind of a regular there. I paid $20 for my last one for this car. Well, he only charged me $15 for this one. So I'm not gonna show, but I'm gonna kind of walk through how basically these come apart. I got an example sitting off to the side I'll go show in a second, but I just pulled it off as one piece. You don't have to do that, but I did because the guy at the junkyard, he charged me a cheaper price. You bring you know, 4 or 5 individual parts, he might rack up the price more, if that makes sense to you. So I'll kind of explain how it comes undone and kind of how it works, and it's really easy to take apart. So give me 1 second. So I have everything here laid down from like bottom to top. This would be the backing plate basically that you need. This bracket does not transfer from Series 1 to Series 2. You would have to adapt it to some kind if you were going to run the Series 2 ICM on an older car, if it's even possible. I'm not 100% on that. But this is the ignition module. These are your coils laden over. So this bracket, it slides onto 2 studs that are bolted into the engine block. this ignition module sits down on top of it, like so. It has holes that'll match up with holes in the bottom. Now the threads are actually in the backing plate itself, not the ignition control module. And these little screws go through the coil packs, through the ignition control module. They have plugs on the bottom of them that will sit on these, and they will bolt into this bracket here. Now you can take it all apart like I did here, but I found it easier to just remove the two studs and pull it off as a whole bracket. And for that, it's pretty easy, and I'll just kind of show. But basically, so you'll have a 9/32 socket. Just undo that plug, unplug it. If it's from a junkyard, you don't care about marking the wires. If it's on your own car, I marked my spark plug wires with a little marker I can read. And then basically, if you come down here, it's a little hard to see. I don't know if you can see, but you'll just have to take my word for it. But anyway, there's yeah, right there, there's a stud. So on this left stud here, where you can see there's two nuts, one of those nuts will come off. You need a deep well 15mm socket. Take that first nut off, you're gonna have a ground wire, a little eyelet. You can see it right there. You slide that off the stud, and then you can take the second nut off, again with a deep well 15mm. And then there's one kind of on the bottom underneath this first coil. Take that 15mm off, and this will slide off this way, and you can pull it off. And install reverser removal, of course. Mark your plug wires, line them up. And I started up, and all my problems were gone, just like that. So it was indeed the ignition control module. Every single problem I seem to have with these running, especially this one, it always falls back to that ignition control module. So that's kind of why I leaned towards it being a fault, because these are very faulty on these cars. They just, the heat, especially in the summer, the heat will definitely kind of kill them off. And they just, the heat just, like I said, it's like a battery. Extreme heat will just kill these very fast, and with these running over 200 degrees in the summer or AC going, they get real hot, and it was just time for a new one. So that's what I did. I got that one. It's a used one. There's plenty at the junkyard. If it goes out in like 6 months, well, guess what? I'm just gonna go buy another one for probably, again, $15. But that's how I fixed my P0300 on my 2002 Buick LeSabre. It was actually very easy. If you just sit down and think about it and do a couple simple tests, it's not terribly difficult to find out. Another thing I tested was this fuel pressure regulator. Basically, you'll just pull this vacuum line off while the vehicle's running. If fuel comes out of this, your fuel pressure regulator is bad. If it's holding a vacuum, you'll be able to put your finger on it. You'll feel it sucking. If it holds a vacuum, it's fine. If this is spitting out fuel, though, that is not good, and it would have to be replaced. But that wasn't an issue, so I eliminated that too. That was one other little thing I also tested. Also, I tested the intake manifold for leaking, because I know that's a very common issue on the Series 2. How I did that was spraying carb cleaner around the gasket area on both the upper and the lower intake, and there was no change in idle. I couldn't see any of the cleaner being sucked into the intake, so I think the intake is fine for now. That was something else I kind of eliminated in the process of diagnosing. Hope this gives you an idea. This car's been okay. I don't drive it much. If you're gonna get one of these as a daily driver, you're gonna have to put some money into it. You're just not gonna have a choice. 20-year-old cars now, they're gonna need work done to it. The engines are really good, except for the accessories. The internals of the engine are really strong, though, and these will run a really, really long time if you just take care of them and kind of fix everything else around it, which I know it sounds like a lot, but you're going to do that with every newer car today, too, once it gets past like 10 years old. And that's going to be even more expensive than something like this. This is one of the easiest engines you could ever work on. So anyway, that's going to kind of conclude diagnosing and fixing my P0300. And I thank you all for watching. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care.